Chris Pratt just did something almost no one saw coming. His new thriller, Mercy, knocked Avatar Fire and Ash off the top of the box office. After weeks of total dominance, James Cameron's sci-fi giant finally fell. But here's the twist. This win didn't happen because audiences suddenly rushed to theaters. It happened during one of the quietest, coldest, and most chaotic movie weekends of the entire year. Hundreds of theaters shut their doors. Millions of people stayed home. And Hollywood's box office numbers froze in real time. So the real question isn't how Mercy won. It's whether this was a victory at all, or a warning sign no one wants to talk about. Going into the weekend, Mercy wasn't supposed to be a box office story at all. It's a near-future thriller built around a risky idea. A man on trial for his wife's death, with his fate decided not by a jury, but by an artificial intelligence judge. No superheroes, no built-in franchise. Just Chris Pratt, a ticking clock, and a concept that leans more unsettling than crowd-pleasing. Yet somehow, when the dust settled, Mercy landed at number 1. An estimated $11.2 million was enough to push it past Avatar, Fire and Ash, a film that had ruled the box office for 5 straight weekends. On paper, it looked like a major upset, the kind studios dream about. A smaller, original movie unseated one of the biggest franchises in history. However, that headline overlooks a crucial detail. This wasn't a normal weekend, and Mercy wasn't exactly surging forward. It was standing when everything else slowed down. And once you look closer at how that happened, the story starts to feel very different. While Mercy was climbing to the top of the chart, something far bigger was happening outside the theaters. A massive winter storm stretched across the U.S., locking down cities from Texas all the way to the Northeast. Roads are iced over, power went out, and movie-going quietly ground to a halt. More than 250 theaters were forced to close, with some circuits shutting down dozens of locations at once. Millions of people were told to stay home, and many didn't have a choice. By the end of the weekend, total box office revenue collapsed to its lowest point of the year so far. A rare moment when Hollywood's numbers didn't just dip, they froze. This wasn't a hit for one movie. It dragged down everything. New releases struggled to break through. Holdovers tumbled harder than expected. Even massive franchises felt the chill. The rankings still existed, but the race itself had slowed to a crawl. And in that kind of environment, finishing first doesn't always mean you actually won. At first glance, Mercy's opening looks respectable. About $11.2 million domestically, just under $23 million worldwide. Enough to claim the top spot, enough to generate headlines. But once you dig past the ranking, the picture gets a lot murkier. Audience reactions were lukewarm. Critics weren't kind. Exit polls suggested many viewers walked out unsure how they felt about what they'd just seen. And for a $60 million production led by a major star, the energy around the film felt strangely muted. This wasn't buzz, it was curiosity mixed with hesitation. There's also the bigger context. This is Chris Pratt's first original theatrical movie as a lead, not tied to an established franchise. And unlike most studios, Amazon doesn't need a massive box office run for this to work. Reports suggest the real value comes later: premium rentals, streaming views, and long-term platform engagement. Some industry watchers believe the theatrical release was never the endgame, but a launchpad. So while Mercy technically finished first, the numbers don't scream breakout hit. They whisper something else: that this movie survived the weekend, rather than conquered it. And that becomes even clearer when you look at the film it supposedly defeated. For the first time in weeks, Avatar Fire and Ash wasn't sitting at number 1. Domestically, it slipped to second place with around $7 million, officially ending its long reign at the top. On the surface, it looked like the moment the franchise finally ran out of steam. But that impression doesn't hold for long. Even as it slowed down in North America, Fire and Ash continued to dominate overseas. International audiences poured in tens of millions more, pushing the film past the $1 billion mark outside the US alone. Its global total kept climbing, quietly reminding everyone that Avatar doesn't play by the same rules as most releases. Compared to James Cameron's earlier entries, this chapter doesn't match those record-breaking heights. Still, in today's box office landscape, clearing $1 billion worldwide is no small feat. While newer films fought for survival in a storm-frozen market, Avatar kept moving forward almost untouched. So yes, it lost the crown for a weekend. But in the bigger picture, the war was never really in doubt, and Disney wasn't done proving that point. Even with Avatar briefly slipping from the top spot, Disney never actually lost control of the box office. While attention was focused on Mercy's surprise debut, another Disney juggernaut was quietly piling up numbers. Zootopia 2 continued its steady run, pulling in millions more, and crossing major milestones both domestically and overseas. After weeks in theaters, the animated sequel showed no signs of collapsing, proving once again that family-driven blockbusters age very differently from adult thrillers. The film didn't need headlines or controversy, it just kept selling tickets. Together, Avatar and Zootopia 2 locked Disney into dominance of the global charts for weeks in a row. In contrast, several newer releases struggled to find a footing, with sharp drops and underwhelming debuts becoming the norm. Even award buzz, which once gave films a noticeable boost, barely moved the needle this time around. The pattern was hard to ignore. While other studios chased short-term wins, Disney was playing a longer, quieter game, and still winning it. Which brings the story to its final question. Was this a victory or a warning? When the weekend ended, Mercy technically stood at number 1. Headlines were written, records were logged. But the deeper story wasn't about a movie winning, it was about how fragile the box office has become. A single winter storm was enough to flip rankings, slash revenue, and turn a modest opening into a headline victory. And for a studio like Amazon, that might be perfectly fine. Theatrical success no longer has to mean packed theaters for weeks on end. Sometimes it's just the first step before streaming takes over. Meanwhile, franchises like Avatar and brands like Disney proved they're still operating on a different level, where one slow weekend barely leaves a mark. They don't need surprise wins, they just keep moving forward. So Mercy didn't just topple Avatar, it exposed something bigger. The movie industry is caught between old rules and new priorities, where finishing first doesn't always mean you truly won. And if this weekend is any sign of what's coming next, Hollywood may be heading into a future that looks very different than the past.